Jayo Radhamadhuva Kunya Bihari Jayo Radhamadhuva Kunya Bihari Gopi Janabalaba Giribadadhude Gopi Janabalaba Giribadadhude Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Manachare Yamuna Tira Manachare Jayaran Madhuva Kunya Bihari Jayarad Umadhuva Kunya Bihari Gopi Dana Badaba Giri Badadhahuti Gopi Janabalaba Giri Badadhari Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Manachare Yamuna Tira Manachare Jayaranu Madhava Kunya Bihari Jayaranu Madhava Kunya Bihari Madhava Kunya Bihari Jai Om Vishnu Pad Paramahansa Paravidikacharya also Teta Satashi Shibad His Divine Grace Abhaya Chandananda Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Anantakoti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Friends say Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shidwaita Gadadha Shivasati Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Gopinath Sayam Mukunda, Radha Kunda, Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Vrindavanam Ki Jai, Mathuradam Ki Jai, Jagannath Swami Ki Jai, Yamunamai Ki Jai, Shivali Tulasi Devi Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutale. Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharni Nivasesha Srinivadi Paschatade Chatar. So we are reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, 53rd chapter, text 5. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Sa Chasvai Ashayibya Sugriva Megapushpa Balakai Yuktam Ratam Upandiya Tastau Pranjalir Agrata Satchasvai Shabdyasugrivaga Mega Pushpa Palakai Yuktam Ratam Upaniha Tastau Pranjaliragrata Sachasvai Shabdyasugrivaha Mega Pushpa Balahakai Yuktam Ratam Upaniha Tastau Pranjaliragrata Sachasvai Shabdyasugrivaha Mega Pushpa Balakhakai Yuktam Ratam Upaniha Tastau Pranjaliragrata. Okay. Balakai Amratamupaniya Pranjaliragrata Grata Sugriva else? Yeah, go ahead. Paniya Jaliagrata. Okay. Sa he daruka. Cha and Ashvay with the horses. Shaivya Sugriva Megapushpa Valaha Kai. Named Shaibya Sugriva, Megapushpa, and Bolahaka. Yuktam, yoked. Ratam, the chariot. Upandiha, bringing. Tashtau, stood. Pranjali, with palms joined in reverence. Agrata, in front. Translation, Daruka brought the Lord's chariot, yoked with the horses named Shaibya, Sugriva, Megapushpa, and Malahaka. He then stood before Lord Krishna with joined palms. You can repeat. Daruka brought the Lord's chariot, yoked with the horses, named Shaibya Sugriva, Megapushpa, and Balahaka. He then stood before Lord Krishna with joined palms. So purport by the followers of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti quotes the following text of the Padma Purana describing Lord Krishna's chariot horses. Shaibya tu shuka patrabha, sugrivo hema pingala, megapushpastu megabha, panduro ibalahaka. Shaibi was green like a parrot's wings, Sugriva yellow gold, Megapushpa the color of a cloud, is what the name means, Bala Aka, whitish. So, so the commentaries of the Acharyas are more or less the same, except at the end of Jiva Goswami's commentary, in which he says, the horses were yoked to the chariot called Sugriva Pushpaka. Daruka brought the chariot near to Krishna. He placed his hands on his head with devotion. Pra Anjali. So I'm going to read the next text. Aruya Sandanam Shaurir Dvijam Aropya Tornagai Anartadeka Ratrena Vidarban Agamandayai. And translation is, Lord Shauri mounted his chariot and had the Brahmana do likewise. Then the Lord's swift horses took them from the Anarta district to Vidarbha in a single night. So, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments on this verse. Hearing the message of Rukmini in the evening, that same night, Krishna mounted his chariot and rode off and arrived in Kundina in the early morning. And Jiva Goswami, Krishna took the Brahmana sent by Rukmini with him because it was easier for him to go by this method, and he could take the message to her quickly to save her life. Though Krishna is the Supreme Lord, because he partakes of human pastimes, he rode on a chariot and acted as a warrior, Shauri. And finally, Sanatana Goswami, Krishna took the Brahman sent by Rukmini with him. The same thing. I'm just going to skip through that. Though Krishna is the Supreme Lord, because he wanted to display his powers, he acted as a warrior, Shauri. Moreover, because he was born in the dynasty of Shura, he was naturally endowed with all powers. He used horses because they were swift. They also had special power. Although he was directly the Lord, he played the role of a human, acting like a warrior, taking birth in a Kshatriya family, using horses. So, Omagana Timidandasha Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmiritam Gena Tasmai Shigadvedamaha. So, a little bit of information first. Shura, of course, was the leader of the Yadu dynasty and the father of Vasudev, and Kunti. And of course, Kunti was called Kunti because it's an interesting story that Shura promised his good friend Kunti Bhoja, because Kunti Bhoja did not have any children. He promised his good friend Kunti Bhoja that the next child born from him and his wife would be given to Kunti Bhoja, and therefore Kunti is called Kunti, although she is the sister of Vasudeva. Anyway, so then more information about the horses. I did a little research. So these horses, according to Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, descended from the spiritual world. And even though they descended from the spiritual world, just like we hear in this particular purport, that Krishna descended from the spiritual world, obviously, avatar, which means to cross down, they acted sometimes as ordinary horses and sometimes not as ordinary horses. In the same way, Krishna sometimes acts as an ordinary human being, and sometimes he acts as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the story that was told by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur about the horses was that in relationship to the story of Krishna taking Arjuna and retrieving the Brahmana's sons, because the Brahmanas actually were protected by the Yadu dynasty, and the Brahmana's sons kept disappearing right after birth. And Arjuna, just to reiterate the story real quickly, Arjuna had taken a vow to protect the Brahmana's sons, and if he couldn't do it, he would commit suicide. So the Brahmana's sons disappeared, and he couldn't do it. So he was getting ready to commit suicide. And then Krishna said, no, that's not a good idea. Get on the chariot, and we will find the Brahman's sons. So it's described as that chariot went to the Mahavishnu. The chariot passed through a very dark area after it pierced through the coverings of the material world. And the horses were scared. That's very interesting. The horses were scared, although they had previously come down from the spiritual world. So they're acting sometimes as ordinary horses and sometimes as extraordinary horses. I mean, it's quite interesting. So I want to talk about this in relationship to Krishna, that Krishna plays a role, as described in the purport by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and Sanatana Goswami, as a human being, and appears sometimes that he is very limited and even has a material body, even though he doesn't have a material body. And then other times, he appears as the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his unlimited feature. So, here's some of the stories, and actually, as everybody knows, I love the Ramayana. I may be a Ram Bhakta instead of a Krishna Bhakta. But anyway, or Hanuman Bhakta. So, in the Ramayana, you have many incidents where Krishna just acts like he's affected by even the modes of nature, the material body. And one story that comes to mind is the story of when he and Lakshman were confronting Indrajit. Now, Indrajit had all these different weapons, and one of the weapons There's two stories about Indrajit. One of the weapons he had was the Naga Pasha, which is like a snake weapon, which is the Nagas, the venomous snakes. So Indrajit fired this weapon at Ram and Lakshman, and these Nagas, or big snakes, actually covered them, and it was predicted that they were going to die before the rising of the sun the next day. So, and there were symptoms that were manifest in their transcendental bodies, because we know they have a transcendental body. I mean, obviously. Ajopi Samadhi Avayatma, Bhutanam Nisharopi Shram, Prakaptim Swam Adishtaya, Sambhavami Atmamaya, as described in the Bhagavad Gita. When Krishna comes down, he comes down in his self-same spiritual body, that Ishwara Parama Krishna Sachidananda Vigraha and Adiradir Govinda. But all the symptoms were there, like they were going to die. The breathing was becoming more shallow. And so they had to depend, ostensibly, on Garuda coming. And Garuda came down and, of course, either scared the snakes away or ate the snakes. And in this way, Ram and Lakshman came back to consciousness. But, of course, they never lost consciousness. It's quite interesting, the acting of the Lord as an ordinary human being. Another instance was the Shakti weapon that was fired by Indrajit at Lakshman. And we know that Lakshman was hit by the Shakti weapon. And this is described in the Valmiki Ramayana as the Shakti weapon of Indra. There was no way to counteract that weapon. In fact, in the Mahabharata war, because there was no way to counteract that weapon, Krishna arranged for Ghatotkacha, you know that story, Ghatotkacha? To Ghatotkacha to sacrifice his life because Karna was going to use this Shakti weapon on Arjuna. And there was no way to save Arjuna. So the same Shakti weapon that was fired at Ghatotkacha was actually fired at Lakshman. And Lakshman, basically, it appeared he was going to lose his life. And, of course, then you have that famous story of Hanuman going and getting the Sanjeevani and bringing Lakshman back to life. And so many stories in the Ramayana. I love these stories, as everyone can tell. Then you find Ram, when Sita is kidnapped, he's lamenting like an ordinary human being. In fact, he becomes so much overcome by lamentation, he threatens to destroy the whole universe. He takes out his bow and arrow and says, I'm going to destroy the whole universe. And Lakshman has to say, no, that's not a good idea. And, these are ordinary human emotions where the Lord is acting. Now, this, of course, we understand is Yogamaya, and the Lord, we're going to get into a second why the Lord acts like that. Another story is as they were looking for Sita Devi in the springtime, Ram was stimulated with romantic thoughts. And he starts lamenting and even crying, feeling the separation from Sita Devi. And then in Krishna's pastimes, Krishna becomes bewildered when the coward boys enter into the mouth of the Aghasura demon. And he's thinking, what am I going to do? Krishna is frightened when Yashodamai runs after him with a stick. So then Krishna also is nagged by Satyabhama like an ordinary person. So these pastimes are very attractive, and we're going to talk about that in a second. And of course, then there's many pastimes when Krishna doesn't act like a human. Bhagavad Gita comes to mind when Krishna manifests the universal form. And then, of course, 4 arms, and then 4 hands. And then he manifests his original 2-handed form. And then the Aghasura demon story, where Krishna becomes bewildered, and after a while, he enters into the Aghasura himself, and he expands himself and chokes the Aghasura. And of course, then the famous story, which is one of my favorite, of lifting Govardhan Hill. So why does Krishna act as a human and enact these pastimes? He has many different reasons. Of course, the first reason is to enjoy ras, different exchanges with his devotees, and different exchanges insofar as killing demons and other things like this. And in this way, when he doesn't act, he enjoys much more not acting as the Supreme Personality of Godhead and interacting in a more human-like fashion. Another reason, of course, is for the pleasure of his devotees. Krishna entertains and attracts his devotees, and as Srila Prabhupada comments in the beginning of the Krishna book, Krishna comes to show the conditioned souls the nature of the absolute truth so that they can become attracted to Krishna. Now, in this regard, I'd like to cite a very beautiful poem written by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, which is entitled Krishna's Human-like Pastimes. Now, this poem deals with the Vrindavan pastimes, but many of the essential aspects of this also can be utilized in reference to Krishna's pastimes outside of Vrindavan in Dwarka and Mathura. Of course, Vrindavan is most perfect. And then you got Mathura and Dwarka, more perfect like this. But still, you still have these human-like pastimes in those 3 places. In the Vaikuntha planets, it's not really human-like pastimes. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or Lord Vishnu. Narayan is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the intimacy is not there. So this is a beautiful song by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. It's a Leela Kirtan, since Mother Urmila did a song yesterday. So I'm not going to sing, but I'm going to recite the Sanskrit. Jive kripa kori goloke hari braja bhava prakashilo se bhava rasakya vrindavana yugya jada buddhi na hoilo, showing his causeless mercy to the fallen souls. And that's one of the reasons why Krishna acts like a human being. The Lord of Goloka has revealed the moods and sentiments of Braj. One who knows about the mellows of such loving exchanges of Braj is fit to enter Vrindavan, as long as he does not maintain materialistic misconceptions. In other words, not to project your own conceptions upon Krishna's pastimes in Braj. And verse 2 is, Krishna Lila Samudra Apar, Vaikuntha Bihar Samana Ihar, Kabu Nahi, Jano Sar. The pastimes of Krishna are like an unfathomable ocean. All the activities taking place in Vaikuntha can never be compared to the sweet essence of Krishna's pastimes in Goloka. And also can't be compared to the Mathura pastimes or Dwarka pastimes, but Goloka stands supreme. Obviously, that's Mathurya Dham. Number 3, Krishna Naraka Sarva Rasadar, Shringarer Visheshata, Vaikuntha Sadaka, Sakye Aparaka, Madure Nohoi Rata. Krishna's pastimes, in the form of a 2-armed human being, are the reservoir of all transcendental mellows, especially the conjugal mellow. The devotee who is following the rules and regulations of Vaikuntha develops only to the mellow of fraternity and its fraternity in awe and reverence too. And is in comparison completely unable to taste any such sweetness as is found in the conjugal relationship. And of course, that refers to a lesser degree to the sweetness in Mathura and Dwarka. And the final verse, Raja Krishna Dana Nabina Madana Aprakrita Rasamoy Jivera Sahita Nitya Lilochita Krishna Guna Gana Hoy. Krishna in Braj is like an ever-fresh, youthful Cupid, abounding in all transcendental ecstatic mellows. He always performs suitable pastimes with the different jiva souls according to their capacity. Thus, some of the multitude of Krishna's virtuous qualities are mentioned. So always keep in mind, of course, Krishna's transcendental body. We recited the verses before, and of course, one who doesn't keep that in mind is described in the Bhagavad Gita, Vishananti Mahmudha. They're mudhas, they're asses. And then the final verse I'd like to read is from the Bhagavatam. From the first canto, first chapter, text 20, in which Lord Krishna is described as playing like a human being and being so masked. Let me just read the verse. This is very much applicable to today's discussions. Lord Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, along with Balaram, played like a human being, and so masked, he performed many superhuman acts. So he played like a human being and also performed superhuman acts which are non-human. And Prabhupada's purport in this regard is very instructive. The doctrines of anthropomorphism and zoomorphism, that means basically people thinking that God is like us, projecting our conception, like thinking that God must look like us. I mean, for example, in different religions, you have God, or let's say even Jesus Christ, depicted according to the way people look in that culture, rather than understanding how Jesus Christ actually looked. But that's of course, Jesus Christ is not God. He is the Son of God. So never applicable to Sri Krishna or the personality of Godhead. The theory that a man becomes God by dint of penance and austerities is very much rampant nowadays, especially in India. Since Lord Ram, Lord Krishna, and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu were detected by the sages and saints to be the personality of Godhead, as indicated in revealed scriptures, many unscrupulous men have created their own incarnations. This process of concocting an incarnation of God has become an ordinary business, especially in Bengal. Any popular personality with a few traits of mystic powers will display some feat of jugglery and easily become an incarnation of Godhead by popular vote. Lord Krishna was not that type of incarnation. He was actually the personality of Godhead from the very beginning of his appearance. He appeared before his so-called mother as four-armed Vishnu, so-called because no one is actually Krishna's mother. Aham bija pradapita. Then at the request of the mother, he became like a human child and at once left her for another devotee at Gokula, where he was accepted as the son of Nanda Maharaj and Yashoda Mai. Similarly, Shri Baladev, the counterpart of Lord Shri Krishna, was also considered a human child born of another wife of Shri Vasudev. That's, of course, Rohini. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that his birth and deeds are transcendental, and that anyone who is so fortunate, and this is very important, to know the transcendental nature of his birth and deeds, will at once become liberated and eligible to return to the kingdom of God. Of course, that's Janma Karma Chami Divyam Yevam Yoliti Tatvataha Chatvadeham Purna Janma 90 Mam 80 Sorjana. So, knowledge of the transcendental nature of the birth and deeds of the Lord Shri Krishna is sufficient for liberation. means all you have to do. Of course, in order to know, Bhaktimam Abhijanati Yavanyas Jasmi Tatvata, you have to be a pure devotee. So that's the catch-22. In the Bhagavatam, the transcendental nature of the Lord is described in 9 cantos, and the 10th canto with specific pastimes are taken up. All this becomes known as one's reading of this literature progresses. It's important to note here, however, that the Lord exhibited his divinity even from the lap of his mother, and that his deeds are all superhuman. Prabhupada said he lifted Govardhan Hill at the age of 7, and that all these acts definitely prove him to be actually the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yet due to his mystic covering, he was always accepted as an ordinary human child by his so-called father and mother and other relatives. Whenever some Herculean task was performed by him, the father and mother took it otherwise, and they remained satisfied with unflinching parental love for their son. As such, the sages of Naimisharanya describe him as apparently resembling a human being, but actually he is the Supreme Almighty Personality of Godhead. So we will end here. Any questions or comments about anything? Yeah, it's from one of the collections of poems. Let me go back to it. I don't know which collection of poems. Krishna's Human-Like Pastimes, and subtitled, it's a Leela Kirtan. It's in the Veda base. So if you go to the Veda base, just look up Krishna's Human-Like Pastimes. A beautiful poem. Yes.
To be ordinary at times, is that meant to help develop the jiva soul's faith in God in any circumstance? In other words, it may appear like he's down and out, but he never can be that way.
No. It's actually those sorts of things, as far as the devotee is concerned, is meant to draw out the devotee's emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh my God, what's going to happen to Lord Ram? And the devotee, being under Yogamaya, forgets that Lord Ram is the supreme. If you remember that Lord Ram was the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he'd be saying, this is nothing, this is just a pastime. Something's going to happen. He's going to get out of this pretty easily. So you find, even in the Ramayana, the devotees, they had knowledge that Ram is the Supreme Lord, is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But because of the pastime, the intense emotion, Yogamaya, even in that case, they forgot. And they became worried about Lord Ram's safety. So it may not, when one reads that, it may not, for those who are conditioned souls who don't understand the philosophy, they may become incredulous. In other words, they may think, how can Ram be God? He needs the help of Garuda to be saved. So it's it may be a test for those who are Ashradana Purucha Dharma Shasha Pranandapa Aprapyamam Nivartante Mrityu Samsara Vartmani, for those who are weak faith. So, yes.
Janma karma the word tattvata and the word
Actually,
Janma karma
the word,
divyam.
Yeah, actually the word tattva.
Because sometimes Prabhupada uses that first to say, oh, it's very easy.
Yeah.
And then it seems extremely easy. So just kind of wondering.
So the word tattvata is translated by Prabhupada there as in truth, but the word tattva actually means to understand the tattvas, like Jiva tattva, Vishnu tattva, Sambandha, Gyan. So one has to understand these things perfectly, and it sounds easy, but it's not easy. You understand? And not simply, in other words, not simply to understand Krishna's pastimes are transcendental, but to understand how it relates to how the pastimes relate to the material world, how the pastimes relate to the jiva souls, why Krishna does, not only they are transcendental, but the why factor, why Krishna does this. And to have realization and faith, one who knows, one who has faith, that's the important factor, the faith. Full trust. Shraddha Shabde Vishal Shakahe Sudrida Nishchaya. So yeah, it's quite more than just knowing. Someone says, are Krishna's pastimes transcendental? Yes, I believe Krishna's pastimes are transcendental. Okay, you're going back to Godhead, Prabhu. No. You have to know the tattvas. What Jiva Tattva is, Vishnu Tattva is, Shakti Tattva is, the material energy, the para and apara, like that. So, any other questions or comments? Krishna Priya.
What is this Shakti weapon?
What?
What is the Shakti weapon exactly?
The Shakti weapon is the Indra's specific weapon that he gave to Karna. Remember that story? And it's described. I was just reading about this in the Ramayana, that there's no defense against that Shakti weapon. Somehow or other, there's no defense against that Shakti weapon. And so that's why when Indrajit hit Lakshman, he said, Lakshman's dead. He was completely convinced. Also with this Nagapash too, with Rama and Lakshman, he thought they were dead because there is no defense against it. So, exactly what it looks like and everything, you'll have to.
It's called Shakti weapon. So is it like? How does it relate to?
How is it what?
It's called Shakti weapon. So how does it relate?
How is it made?
Like, how does it relate? Like we know. Let's say we know.
No,
Tattva
energy.
Shakti.
Shakti. The word Shakti means energy.
Right. So it's used in that way.
Yeah. It's energy.
Yeah.
Just like we have Shakti. Prabhupada
Right.
said we have Shakti.
Right.
We grow our hair and our nails. So that's Shakti.
Mm-hmm. So is it just pastime that Krishna's not? Because Krishna can control everything. So is it just pastime that they have no control of the Shakti weapon?
Yeah, it's a pastime. Actually, even the Shakti weapon can't hurt Krishna.
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously. He's making believe.
Yeah.
And he's also respecting these different energies of the demigods, offering respects. Like that, like Hanuman. Okay, here's a story from the Ramayana, another story. Hanuman respected the Brahma weapon and allowed himself to be tied up. But the interesting thing about that, and he was actually tied up out of respect. He prayed to that weapon, and Indrajit was able to tie up Hanuman. But the interesting thing about that, as soon as you put a regular chain or regular whatever rope around someone, that weapon loses its strength. And Hanuman was free at that point. So they didn't realize that. They chained him up. So, yeah, so there's also the Lord respecting that particular weapon that was given by the demigods. Okay, it is time. Thank you very much. All glory is to His divine grace. Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Enam Kanvandam Maravindadalaya Taksham Varhamatam Samasitam Buddhasundarangam Kandar Agom Vikamaniya Vishesha Shobham Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Angani Yasa Sakalen Priya Priti Manti Vasyanti Panti Kayanti Chiram Naganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadhu Jala Vigrahasya Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami
Namagom Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutale Shimate Bhaktivedanta Sammaniti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Vajan Sesha Shunyavati Matsachagate Satarande Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadada Siva Sati Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Shri Advaita Siva Sati Gaur Bhakta Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadada Siva Sati Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasade Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasade Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare Jaya Radha Goloka Nana Rana Goloka Nana Hare Radhe, 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 Jai Om Vishnu Pad. Charadam Kijai, Jagadasami Kijai, Manamari Kijai, Shimadi Lasidevi Kijai, Sangha Bhakta Vrindi Kijai, Gaur Premananda Hari. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is to Shri Guru and Gauranga Shrima Bhakti God.
Shreya Kairavya Chandrika Vitaranam Vijavadu Jivanam Anandam Vardhanam Pratipanam Purnamrita Swadanam Sarvatma Snapanam Param Vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Namakari Bahuda Nija Sarva Shaktis Tatrapita Niyamita Smaranena Kala Etadrishi Tavakripa Bhagavan Mamapi Durdaiva Midrishami Hajjanina Nuraga Trinadapi Sunichena Turorapi Sahishuna Amanina Manadena Kirtaniya Sadahari Nadanam Najanam Nasundarim Kavitam Vajagadisha Kamaye Mama Janmani Janmani Ishvare Bhavatad Bhaktir Hoitaki Twai Ainanda Tanuja Kinkaram Patitam Mam Vishame Bhavam Budao Kripayata Vapada Pankaja Stita Duli Sajashim Vachintaya Nayanam Galadashu Daraya Varanam Gadgaduridaya Gira Pulakarnishitam Vapukata Tavanama Grahane Bhavishyati Yuga yatam namishena chakshusha pravashayatam shunayatam jagat sarvam govindam virahena me aslishyavapadamatam anastumam adarshanam marma hatakarotuva yatatatava vidadatulam pato nat prananatastu saeva napara. Victory to the Sri Krishna Sankirtan, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of conditional life of repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan movement is the prime benediction for humanity at large. because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we are always anxious. O my Lord, congregational chanting of your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings, and thus you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names you have invested all your transcendental energies. There are not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness you enable us to easily approach you by your holy names, but I am so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than a straw in the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your causeless devotional service, birth after birth. O Son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor. Yet somehow or other I have fallen into the ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. O my Lord, when will my eyes be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up, and when will the hairs of my body stand on end at the recitation of your name? O Govinda, in your separation, I am considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I am feeling all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna is my Lord, and he shall remain so even if he handles me roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted.